On this episode of Growth and Diversity Podcast, hear from co-founders Mike Brown and Sean Davis of Brown Davis Executive Search and their mission to change the trajectory of insurance through the diversity of people. Mike, welcome to the show, partner. How are you
Thanks,
doing?
brother. I'm great. How about you?
I am fantastic. This is our first episode ever of a podcast, I guess our podcast, and one that I know we both are very passionate about. So our inaugural episode of Growth and Diversity. So thanks for being the guinea pig, the first guest.
Thank you for spearheading this.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Mike, I know you've been around the industry for a long time. I've tried to do my fair share, but let's make sure that the guest, our audience, know who a little bit about each of us. So, do you mind introducing yourself, just a little bit about your career and personal stuff?
No, happy to. Happy to. Well, thanks for having me, brother. And again, thanks for spearheading this. But yeah, it's relatively simple. So I've been in the recruiting business for almost 25 years now. Even though I feel mentally that I'm only 25, like age wise, that's definitely different. But no, I started recruiting on a desk in the insurance space, placing distribution professionals and executives on a national basis for life and annuity carriers. And I've been blessed enough that I've worked with some amazing human beings, much like yourself. I've been able to grow multiple organizations and things like that, specific to recruiting and specific to insurance and things like that. I'm married to my beautiful wife of 21 years in November. Oh no, it was 21 years. So 21 years plus now. Her name's Becky, and then we have three great kids. I've got a son who is 17, and then I have twins, daughters who are 14. So between running businesses, partnering with you, having the family life, we find a way to stay busy for sure.
That's awesome. No, it's great. And yeah, fun story. Mike and I met through this business. So he was headhunting, an executive recruiter, and I got to be on both sides of the table with him. So both on the client side and the recruiter side. So clearly, Mike, that went well because now we're partnering together. So I think like a lot of these things, it all comes down to relationships and trust. And I think we got a pretty good one on both sides.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and then what I found was so interesting about our relationship is obviously through the course of just our interactions, we became close. But there was something, it was the long game. You know, we had talked about this for probably 5 years before we even did it.
Yeah.
You made the leap to do it. But I always respected the fact that you had this beautiful corporate background leading these huge teams. But then you had this entrepreneurial spirit and this entrepreneurial itch, so to speak, that I know from a career perspective, if you never had the opportunity to exercise that, then I know that would have been a regret. So kudos to you for leaving a big kind of badass job and taking the leap to go start something from scratch with some dummy from Iowa.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. No, yeah, I appreciate that and I appreciate the call. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that could probably be a whole another episode for you and I is, that I think there's just a great word, entrepreneur. There's a lot of folks on
Mhm.
the corporate side that they can act as an entrepreneur, and there's a culture, there's a leadership, there's a philosophy around it, and when businesses and I think leadership teams and cultures allow for that, you don't have to necessarily make the shift over to entrepreneurship, but that's a whole nother category. So yeah, no, I think you're right. I had the itch, and I didn't want to sit there and later in life and to say what if, and so yeah, we went for it,
No
man.
doubt.
Quick intro, and then we'll kind of jump into this. So, Sean Davis with Brown Davis Executive Search. Mike and I are the co-founders. Prior to that was 16 years in corporate America. So worked with some amazing insurance carriers, and happy to mention them. Very proud of them. Transamerica for 10 years, 3 years at Emeritus, and 3 years at Genworth. Amazing career, fast career in that 16 years. Kind of rose quickly. Had leadership that believed in me, that gave me, the opportunity before probably that I was ready. And I think
Right.
that's a piece of diversity that we're going to talk about. And yeah, no regrets. It was an absolutely amazing ride, amazing career. Love the business. Been in insurance since I've been 18 years old. Got licensed to start selling. My dad, my family's in the business. Our holiday meal conversations, Christmas conversations, they're all around insurance usually. I know what
Fun
companies, yeah,
party animals
it's
at
just
those
it's
holidays.
what we do. It's we've only eaten it off of a plate that's been fed by a commission sale, and so deep appreciation
Yeah.
for the field, the distribution, the entrepreneurship of that, the struggles of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
all those pieces. But yeah, it's insurance is all that I know. Took the test at 18, and never looked back and just absolutely love it. And I think probably, when you become so infatuated with something, then you have this passion of how you make it better. And I think
Right.
that's where you and I just had so much alignment when we started this firm. Was it wasn't like, hey, this is a great business. Mike knows how to do executive search. We saw opportunities, right, of pain points with executive search and insurance that me as a candidate with other firms and things were like, this could just be done better. And so that was one piece of it. But I think you and I just have this immense passion to help people and help companies improve and change for the better. And that's kind of what founded this. Uh, I got on a little excitement there. Personal life, married, combined family of 4 kids. I got 2 of my own, junior in high school, which is really hard to imagine. And then a seventh
Yep.
grade boy, super active. She's a cheerleader, great student. I mean, one day could run this business or a huge insurance company. Love kind of her mentality to things. And then my son, yeah, super passionate, seventh grader. He's in basketball and golf and all those fun things. And just really, really lucky. Beautiful wife. She's a nurse practitioner. And then 2 stepsons that are dominant wrestlers, great students, great people. And um, I think it's funny when you think about the time you spend away from work, because we spend so much time, right at work. And then I enjoy any time that's not at work, spending it with family. And I
Right.
think that's like one of the best compliments you can have for yourself and your family, is those you surround yourself with. So yeah, no, life is good, but hopefully upside from here. So just excited for this and what we're doing. Well, that's quick intros for us. You get to know Mike and I on a very personal side. I think both of us kind of wear everything on our sleeves, and so um, any conversation with us generally goes there pretty quickly. But let's dive into this episode. So, what I wanted to do is set the foundation. We're going to do a whole series on this, Mike, about diversity and growth. When we founded the firm, I don't even know if you know that I went and bought, or growth and diversity, that I went and bought this URL, and I had this concept. I can't even remember if I even shared it with you. If I did, you probably wouldn't have cared. You're like, Sean, we just need to get this firm launched.
No, I know. I know you bought it. I know you bought it.
Okay.
You're a great foresight to that. Nice job.
And so it wasn't around the pandemic or any shifts in, right, the public eye or anything like that. It's not about a campaign. It's a true belief and passion for Mike and I. Um, and so it's something that we believe that we want to make an impact on. So that's what we're going to focus on. I think Mike and I are going to set the stage for the audience today of where this show is going to go. We're going to have amazing guests on, executives from the industry in different roles, different types of folks, different backgrounds, different sexes, different races, different religions, anything and everything that's different. But I think one of the keys is that diversity doesn't just mean that, right? It doesn't just mean the sex. It doesn't just mean the race or whatever it may be. There's so much that diversity can mean. And so that's where I think I want to tee things up, Mike, is just a little bit of, hey, what does diversity mean to you? What does it mean to us? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's a big question. So I'll take a stab at it just from a personal perspective, what diversity means to me. I think we can start. We'll start easy, and I think you and I've been in the insurance industry for a long time, and if you look at the demographics, it's been dominated by old white guys, and so I think there's been a major shift in the last 20 years where we're seeing more diversity in the traditional sense. Um, I started my career placing distribution professionals, so wholesalers, chief sales officer, people that are distributing products in the field. And one of the things that I observed, and quite frankly, how I made a lot of my recruiting money, was we were basically plucking somebody from a competitor and putting to work for our client, which were headhunters, right?
Yep.
Even though my mother doesn't like that term, but I'm fine with that. But I think one of the things that I observed is in a very early on, it's like NFL coaches, right? So why does one NFL coach who has a poor record or a sub 500 record, why does he go to another football team and get an equal or greater than offer, right? He or she did not perform in that job. So why are they making the move? Well, I mean, there's a lot of different answers to that, but like in my simplistic view on it is they're in the club, right? So why does an NFL coach do that? Why would a wholesaler who is let's say a 500 wholesaler at best, why does he or she get to make the move over to another company? Well, they're in the club, they're part of the fraternity, let's say.
Right.
I think when I think about diversity, let's just take it from that example, but I think it can apply to a lot of our clients on the fintech side and the carrier side, broker side, whatever they might be. I think there's so much talent that exists within the organization that is non like vertical or functional related
Hmm.
that we can pull from. But even more so, I think there's great talent that is being trained in the tech industry. That if we could get them excited about the insurance industry, like that cross functional talent. So taking people from outside of the industry and putting them into our industry. I think one of the things that you and I know are passionate about is that, let's say, um, cultivating that talent, so to speak. I think that's one thing.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and then I think the second point that I have is I think about diversity when you think about like let's call it race diversity,
Yep.
right? Or let's think about socioeconomic diversity, things of that nature. Um, I have um, I have been blessed to grow up with a family that I love my family. I loved everything about my family, but I also grew up in a family that, like from what I'll call a socioeconomic perspective, we're on the lower spectrum. Like
Right.
we didn't have a lot of money growing up. A lot of love, a lot of exposure to different things in the world, but not a lot of money. I mean, and so that proved to be one of my motivators in life. Is I wanted to provide that way. So, anyways, I digress to that in that I have a friend who was kind enough to sit down with me and talk to me about diversity, right? And so, when it comes to diversity, one of the things he said in my naive perspective, he was kind enough just to like share with me his perspective and a different kind of perspective of what things were. And so when I was younger, I thought that everybody could pull themselves up by their bootstraps, right? So I bootstrapped it, so to speak.
Right.
Like I had the gumption, I had the drive, and I made it happen. And he's like, I understand where you're coming from, and kudos to you. He goes, but you had two parents that loved you and that were there and that pushed you. And he goes, and secondarily, you also had exposure to people and educated people, people that were successful. Your grandparents were successful. People in like our church who I saw. So I had exposure to what the world was. We traveled a little bit, even on a shoestring budget.
Right.
And he goes, now flip this. He goes, flip this a little bit. Imagine that you are in a one parent household. Imagine that parent doesn't exist for whatever reason. Imagine that your other parent has to work two or three jobs to make ends meet. Imagine that shelter is their number one priority. Imagine food is your number one priority in that order. When you're thinking about the basic necessities of like living, you can't think about retirement, growth, careers. You can't think about the luxuries that we have.
Right.
And he goes, and that conversation, and I won't digress into all of it, but that conversation had such an impact on me, like a mental impact, that it really shaped where I was coming from. And not only the diversity of like my cheesy NFL analogy, but in this scenario, it really caused me to want to reach out and to help those individuals who need a shot,
Yep.
because there are so many beautiful people out there. There's so many bright people out there. And it really is about, did you get your shot? And so I also think about that. Are we as an organization and Brown Davison as a company, are we helping people get their shot? You know, whatever it is. And so lastly,
Totally agree.
we we put not only our
I feel
time
like
where
there's a
our
little shout out to like Hamilton as well. Gonna get my
yes,
shot.
that's right, man. I like it. So, anyways, we put our money where our mouth is, and so our kids go to public school. We're,
Yep.
we're probably the only people in our group that send our kids to public school, and we do that intentionally because we want them exposed to like what the reality of the world is. We
Yep.
want them to have empathy for those around them, right? I think that's very important. We want them to have a service mentality to help other people. And then financially, we put our money back into the community to help those that need it the most, children, underprivileged, whatever that case might be. That's where my heart is. And so personally, my heart is there. Professionally, I want to see how we can juice really good talent that can help the industry from a different perspective, but then also giving them an opportunity, quite frankly. How do we help others? Sean, you and I have been blessed enough that we have had some professional success. And so that old adage is like, how do you send the elevator back down? I want to keep sending that elevator back down. I hate that phrase,
Yeah.
but I want to send that elevator to as many people as I possibly can.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And yeah, to add to that, and there's something I want to, if we have time, I want to come back to is I know you do a lot in the community. And I'm not sure I've ever heard you ask for accolades on any of it. It may be a little uncomfortable for you, but I think I've always been impressed that the give back that you have, of the contributions that you make to the community, to the people, and try to help. And it's actually really impressive. And most people probably have no idea of that stuff that you and Becky do. Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of Growth and Diversity Podcast. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Mostra Coffee. That's MOSTRACOFFEE.com. Go to mostracoffee.com. Check out this woman, minority, veteran, immigrant owned micro coffee roaster out of North County, San Diego. They have amazing coffee. We're addicted to it. We've been drinking it for years in our house, and I hope you get to enjoy it in yours. There's a coupon code as being a part of the Growth and Diversity Podcast listening audience. You can enter Brown Davis 10 and the coupon code once you go to checkout, and you'll receive 10% off. Diversity, yeah, diversity to me. I think I love your example of your friend, and the reason for the podcast, the reason for us to go buy this URL, I was actually quite surprised that it wasn't taken. Is I think there's growth in it, and I don't think of it. I don't think it as it's something that you see. I think that's part of it. So I don't think you look into a room, right, and you say like, oh, this is diverse or not diverse. But I do think you kind of nailed this. Like our industry, and I mean, we'll put this in the show notes. There's an article out there that describes us as male, pale, and stale.
100%.
And
And
this is
unfortunately, we're falling into that category
we're
right now.
100%.
Right?
So,
Look at, we're
yeah,
middle aged.
we're it, right? Like, and so, but who not better than to go change it, right? Like, I'm sure there's the quote. I'm going to totally butcher it. Of right, change the doorstep or sweep your own doorstep before you sweep others, or whatever it may be.
Yep.
You and I are passionate about this, and like we want to change it, not just for change sake. Like, right, we're not just saying like, hey, this is a metric, this is a KPI, it's an OKR, and whatever. It's truly about impacting the lives of these individuals. And I think when you have this people-centered mentality and talent-centered mentality, it also can change the trajectory of the companies, right? Because yes, amazing technology will do great things, but the people invented the technology, and that people is generally very diverse. So I think there is growth in it. And when I think about diversity, again, it goes to me beyond the normals of the sex and the race, but it's like of the thought. When I look at my career, um, I think there's two components that people have to understand when it comes to diversity. Is one, your openness to it. You can be very close-minded to it, or close-minded to yourself. And I, quite frankly, Mike, had to get in. I know you have to help me through this sometimes. Is right. I have my view of things and my perspective, and sometimes I can hold on to it probably a little bit long. Um, and so I think diversity in conversation, diversity in thought. But I've reported to males, females, and I can tell you that was different experiences. And I learned tremendously different things of how to lead people, lead organizations, influence projects, initiatives, how to have conversations with colleagues, with your team, with different types of people. So like this individualistic approach, right? It's not a one size fits all.
Right.
And so I've seen the benefit of those things, of having, the easiest one would be like a female CEO, reported to a female CEO. That was an amazing experience. I was very fortunate to be able to do that, and that was different than reporting to a male CEO. In different ages or different experiences, I've reported to folks that had experience in exactly what our business was doing, and then I've reported to folks that were newer to it. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
actually, when I look back, I would say that I was more closed-minded than the company was, and they were, where I didn't think that they necessarily knew what they were doing because they've never done it before. But
Right.
gosh, how much could I have learned if I just went in a little bit more open-minded, right? You don't have to be the expert to help drive success. And there could be a reason that person is there beyond did they have this exact experience on their resume, for say.
Yeah, there's so many like subtopics that we could go from there. But you brought up a good point about the female CEO that you reported to. And I oftentimes I don't think I fully digest that enough. So the business that I bought, I own
Mm-hmm.
multiple businesses, but the business that I bought, it was a recruiting business. And for 13 years, I worked for the most amazing woman. She was the owner of this firm, She's my mentor. She's my friend. And to this day, I ended up buying the firm from her. But it was through her grace and through her patience and through her putting me in a headlock from time to time. She was able to kind of lead me and guide me through so many of the challenges of business development, so much of the challenges of managing people. She was an awesome resource for me. And I
Right.
came from a family where I was the oldest of three boys, completely male dominant environment. It was just four meatheads with my dad. And coming into this environment, the lady I worked for, her name was Cindy. Um, she was just an amazing, patient human being with me, and all my naivete. She was kind enough to like show me like the errors in my thinking or the errors in
Yeah.
my approach. Now, if I screwed that up a couple of times, she could absolutely bulldog and put the hammer down, which I love and respected. But having worked with her and having that perspective was immensely important to me, right? And so male, female, like or race, like I think that's all important. But then you said something about like the diversity of thinking, and whether you call it diversity or whether you call it openness, right?
Yep.
One of the things that I think about as a leader of multiple organizations is, am I the guy that knows it all, or am I the guy that is eliciting or soliciting feedback and insight from those within the organization, maybe with less tenure, right?
Yeah.
Because I think about when I was coming up, Cindy was kind enough to listen to my ideas, vet my ideas. Some of them we ran with, some of them we didn't. But am I doing that as well? Am I giving the people the opportunity within our organizations to help us grow and help us multiply this kind of mission
Yeah.
and vision that we have? So
That's great. It makes me think about, I don't know a lot of billionaires, and I know you and I have talked about this. But one I'm familiar with, to what you just said, you, billionaire, you would think success, knows everything, right, has all the answers. And one of the things that was shared with me, and again, just kind of like listening and learning, always kind of being a sponge, is the person was describing them and said, one thing about them is that they've surrounded themselves with the expert, and they'll never
mhm,
act like they know everything. And so at any point given in time, there's roughly 100 people, let's say, that they can call on for some said topic and just listen, solicit
mhm,
feedback, ask questions, and listen. And I think if you think about that, then there's diversity, right? That 100 people is made up of different experiences. It could be
totally,
completely outside of the industry, but it just may be, hey, I want to get your thought on this. And
totally.
and so I think there's just so much there. I think about career experiences. We're gonna have some guests on in the future, right? And I think about diversity that way of how you design your
Mhm,
career. And if you start in operations or you start in distribution or finance, but you ultimately, I wrote on a napkin when I was, I think, gosh, 20 years old. It was this current CEO of a company, was my mentor. And he's like, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? And I put CEO of an insurance company on the napkin. And if someone has these different career paths and career goals, like, but there's not a straight line to get there. And
right.
if you want to go and grab, right, the different diversity of knowledge, you can do those things. So I think that there's just so much to your point we can unpack that I'm super excited about where we're going to take this thing. And I know you and I will probably have different updates throughout. Um, so the male pale and stale fires me up, right? That gets me excited about what we can do to change the industry that we love, we're passionate about, and that we serve and support.
Totally.
Um, by seeing that and you and I acknowledging that, not hiding from it and understanding like, hey, look at these guys, we're in it. Um, we quickly came up with we are going to work with diverse, emerging, and progressive talent. So, like we kind of said, okay, if that's what it is, then we're going to go do this. We're going to help companies find this as well. Not we're not agnostic, or we're not going to shy away from like, hey, the best talent will win the search that fits multiple things that our clients are looking for. From your side, Mike, just share some ideas or just thoughts around what companies can do to become more diverse when it comes to talent, given that we're kind of a talent centric, talent curation company.
For sure. Yeah, one of the things that I know you and I observe is from the talent perspective, there's an extreme openness to go different places, right? So the talent will see the opportunity, and there will be a willingness to go to our client. Let's say it's outside of the industry or cross functional ops to sales, whatever it might be. But from a from a client side, carrier, broker, fintech, insurtech seems a little bit more open. But let's say from a carrier side, they're hiring us, right? Here's the challenge, and
Yeah.
I'll give you some of it, but the challenge is they're hiring us because they want us to headhunt somebody that does that exact job. They're going to pay our fee in order to find somebody that's doing the job. So we're plucking people.
Yeah.
So an inherent challenge is hiring somebody that doesn't have that exact experience, right? Who doesn't have the actual job description on their resume or the exact one and bringing it over. So how could companies be more open minded to that? One of the things I would do is like, I look at everything from a stats basis. Like, is what you're doing working right now? And if it is, awesome. Keep rolling with it. But if it's broken, and you and I have an inside look into a lot of different things,
Right.
and not everything is working perfectly. So if it is broken, what are ways that we can approach that? My suggestion is this: is I look at the core of who the human is, right? So think about, like, Sean, your career is a perfect example of that. What'd you go? Distribution, marketing, started your own little firm within an insurance company, operations, talent acquisition.
Yeah.
You didn't have any of those job titles. Like, you had
No.
never done any of that stuff before, but a couple of your CEOs trusted you because you had the brain power, you had the desire, you had the willingness, it was part of your track of where you were wanting to go. You were going to figure it out. So they trusted you at a responsibility level. And so I think you can't do this across the organization as a whole, but I think you can
Right.
interject people who have the right motives, the right drive, the right interpersonal skills, the knowledge, the cross functional knowledge. Maybe they're not deep line experts in that like vertical, whatever that vertical might be, but maybe they know just enough, like your billionaire example, where they could pull the right people together.
Yeah.
They're the quarterback. So I think from a carrier perspective or from a client perspective, I just think a willingness to look outside of the industry and say, this person has the absolute dynamics, let's say, personality and drive to do this job. They might not have all the skills. So, quite frankly, I think it's a willingness. But I think that's hard when you get into a bigger organization that has job descriptions that are written. You have talent acquisition, you have HR, you have the business unit, you have the cross functional business unit that's looking at it. That becomes a very complex thing. So I think it's easier to
100%.
execute on a smaller scale. But yeah, I mean, like, let's say a mid-sized insurance carrier. How do you think you affect change from a diversity perspective there, where it's meaningful and
Yeah.
not just hitting a quota or a number?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think we get this question when I'm talking to executives and then inviting folks to the podcast. And I think I think there's a grassroots effort, right? Like we have to do a better job of being representative of the communities in which we operate in and the people that we serve with our products and solutions. It could be on the life and annuity side, retirement, PNC, all over the board, employee benefits. Um, and we have to make it more attractive to be in the industry. Like
100%.
people have to believe that insurance is cool. Like, look at this industry and how long it's been
Correct.
around. It's amazing, but it gets the stigma. And so those things are changing. And I think there is a natural influence from insurtech, fintech that has opened up that a little bit. But quite frankly, you can go to the ones that, right, they talk about being 150, 200 years old. There's nothing wrong with those organizations and they're doing some really great stuff. But sometimes it just gets a little bit pushed back because they've been around for so long. So I think the grassroots is huge. I know some specific examples of going into college programs. I went to Drake University specifically because it had an insurance concentration. That's
Mm-hmm.
great. There's HBUs that are doing some of this stuff now. Actuarial science now intersecting with computer engineering degrees and programs. I mean, there's all these different things that I think can happen as we curate and raise talent to
Right.
then right get into it. But then they're going to help. They're going to want to take our industry and companies to the next level. And it wasn't the slotted job that we maybe had before.
Right.
So I think that's one. Career tracks, right? Tours of duty. People are going through the ones that really want to change things and want to grow. It's a 2 or 3, maybe 4 year deal. Younger in their careers, they got to have something new
Yeah.
every 2 to 3 years as they
Yeah.
go along. You know, it could be 4 or 5 years, and then the average CEOs, there's some kind of stat out there that says they're ineffective or not necessarily as effective after 6 or 7 years. I don't know if that's right or wrong. Haven't gone
Right.
into the data, but there's I think there's some stats and data around that. So I think you're right, and like one of the best examples that I had was when I was asked to take over talent acquisition um, in HR. I've never been in HR, and so like the first day on the job, I'm now leading talent acquisition, multiple sites across the country. I think we had 3,000 open jobs for North America, and I asked the recruiters like, "Hey, how many calls did you make today?" And they like looked at me like, what are you talking about? I had no idea even what the job was, but I had a different view from being sales and marketing. And then that was literally one of the best. And it was it for a year. After that year, we did so many things. We put structure, people, process, optimization, technology, all these different things in play. Um, but I went to the person that I reported to, and I told him, I was like, look, I think I've done all that I can do. I don't know what I can do to take it beyond this. Now it's ready for
Right.
someone different. And that's probably a little bit, I think you have to understand. The other piece I think that you just nailed too, as we're wrapping things up, is what can that mid-sized carrier do, or any carrier or company that that we're talking to. Um, it is a massive investment of time and resource from a human capital management standpoint. Like an HR team that has a strategy around this, and we have a client right now that has a very good example of this, but it's hard. It takes
Yeah.
time. It takes planning. It takes a lot of conversation, strategy, meetings, all those things in order to make this happen. So I think there's multiple ways that organizations can do this, from top down, bottom up, cultural dynamics, all those things. But there's so much that you and I are going to go into. I want to keep it kind of here. I think you and I could continue to unbundle things and carry this conversation. But Mike, I think for episode one, we've probably have covered more than I was thinking, and I love where we went with it. So, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah. Thanks for spearheading this. I enjoyed the conversation. I got the energy going a little bit. A couple times when you were talking, I got some goosebumps. So it's good to know we still have the same level of passion towards the topic, trying to
Yeah,
change things.
no, absolutely. So, well, thanks everyone for tuning in to the first ever episode of Growth and Diversity, for our interview with my partner, my business partner, Mike Brown, my friend, and myself. I'm Sean Davis with Brown Davis Executive Search. Thanks for listening.